When I moved into Pine Brook Acres, I was struck by the tall pines, the manicured lawns, and the crisp mountain air. I'd spent most of my adult life traveling, working as a wildfire evacuation specialist for a major government agency. I loved my job, coordinating large-scale evacuations when raging wildfires threatened communities. The stresses were immense, though, so I decided to buy a small home in a tranquil neighborhood for my downtime. Pine Brook Acres looked perfect. Spread across gentle hills on the edge of a national forest, it promised scenic views and a close-knit vibe. The real estate listing boasted about its newly formed Homeowners Association, HOA, which supposedly kept everything orderly. The day I arrived, I was still in my old Jeep loaded with boxes and sleeping bags. The sweet smell of pine sap infused the breeze as I parked outside my new, single-story craftsman home. Not 5 minutes later, a woman in her 50s approached me. She wore a pastel blouse and carried a thick binder that read, Pine Brook Acres HOA Guidelines. Her movements exuded authority, her expression a bizarre blend of politeness and disapproval. "Hello there," she greeted curtly. "I'm Marian Baxter, but folks usually call me Karen. Long story. I'm the HOA president." I shook her hand, telling her my name was Jordan Colton. She seemed unimpressed, glancing quickly at my loaded Jeep. "Just so you know," Karen said in a formal tone, "we have strict noise regulations. Nothing too loud after 8 p.m. And we prefer to keep the street clear, no extended parking. We do things a certain way around here to maintain property values." I nodded politely, though her rigid posture and clipped voice set me on edge. "Thank you for the heads up," I said. "I'm sure I'll adjust. I'm somewhat used to risk management," I added cryptically, though I didn't elaborate on my firefighting and evacuation background. She gave me the binder. "Read it carefully," she insisted. "We have rules about yard decorations, mailbox color, and overall community standards. We take pride in that at Pine Brook Acres." I assured her I'd comply. As she walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that her friendly facade hid a more aggressive micromanaging streak. At that point, though, I was too busy settling in to worry. I had no idea the extent to which her overbearing behavior would escalate, or how it would threaten the entire neighborhood. Pine Brook Acres was nestled against a swath of forested hills prone to wildfire. In times of drought, the pine needles and underbrush could ignite easily from a stray spark. My professional instincts nagged at me, especially when I noticed how many homes were built near dense vegetation. As the new occupant, I introduced myself to neighbors, quickly discovering the area's uneasy relationship with wildfire danger. A few neighbors confided that the HOA had historically resisted any changes that would mar the neighborhood's appearance. For instance, they limited clearing brush or cutting certain trees, citing the desire to preserve a woodsy charm. My eyebrows rose, but I wasn't surprised. Some communities put aesthetics above safety, not realizing how dangerous that trade-off could become. One evening, I walked along a winding road that skirted the forest boundary. The lingering smell of pine was calming, but I also noticed undergrowth, dead branches, dry pine needles littering the ground. An old sign read, "In case of wildfire, evacuation route dash," with an arrow pointing further into the neighborhood. But the sign looked outdated, barely visible behind shrubs. Just as I was contemplating whether to mention these concerns to the HOA, a voice piped up from behind. It was Greg, a friendly neighbor with salt and pepper hair. "You're the new guy, right?" he said, catching his breath from a jog. "Be careful in these woods. Fire season can be rough." I nodded. I was noticing the undergrowth. "Does the HOA do brush clearance?" Greg grimaced. "Karen's not fond of it. She says it ruins the community's natural aesthetics. Some of us have tried pushing for better forest fire prevention measures, but," he shrugged, "you know how it goes. She's the queen around here." I thanked him, a sense of unease blooming in my chest. Though I'd initially hoped to keep my professional life low-key, preferring quiet respite from the stress, I suspected I might have to speak up about wildfire safety eventually. The stakes were too high to remain silent if a real threat materialized. At that point, I only knew Karen as a strict rule enforcer. I couldn't imagine she'd ever do anything so reckless as to sabotage a system meant to keep people safe. But I would soon learn how her obsession with controlling Pine Brook Acres ran deeper than any logic or moral duty. A few weeks later, I attended my first HOA meeting in the community's clubhouse, a modest building with large windows overlooking a small pond. About 20 residents sat in rows, facing a table where Karen presided alongside two other board members who seemed more like her loyal sidekicks than independent thinkers. The meeting opened with trivial matters, disputes over fence heights, complaints about trash bins left out too long, a proposal to repaint the clubhouse exterior. I listened politely, resisting the urge to roll my eyes at how fixated the board was on tiny aesthetic issues. Then, an older gentleman named Harold raised a more pressing topic. "I'd like to revisit the wildfire readiness plan," he said. "We're heading into the dry season, and I recall we had issues last year with a near miss when a brush fire broke out in the foothills. We need to ensure our evacuation routes are clearly posted." Karen's smile grew tense. "Harold, we do appreciate your concern. However, we already have an evacuation plan in place. Residents can find it in the HOA handbook, page 42. Harold frowned. "But the posted signs around the neighborhood are outdated. And I've heard rumors the local emergency sirens in Pine Brook might not be functional. We should test them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I perked up, heart hammering. If the wildfire sirens were out of date, that was a major safety issue. The dryness of the region made it essential for residents to get timely warnings. Karen waved a dismissive hand. "Those sirens are a county responsibility, not ours. No need to alarm the entire neighborhood. We keep Pine Brook acres calm and collected. We don't want fear-mongering over wildfires that might never occur." Something inside me bristled. This was precisely the cavalier attitude that led to tragedies. I cleared my throat and spoke. "My name's Jordan, newly moved here. Actually, I work in wildfire management. I strongly recommend verifying siren functionality, as well as ensuring the posted evacuation routes are up to date. It's standard procedure in high-risk areas." Karen's gaze snapped to me, her eyes narrowing. "Welcome, Jordan. I appreciate your input, but let's not inflate this into a crisis. Our aesthetics and tranquil environment matter to property values. We can't plaster every corner with bright signs or run siren tests that might disturb people unnecessarily." I realized then that her priorities, maintaining an upscale facade and controlling the narrative, overshadowed her willingness to address genuine threats. The meeting ended soon after. Harold thanked me quietly for speaking up. Karen, meanwhile, gave me a fixed smile that didn't reach her eyes. The tension was thick, though I had no clue how far she'd go to keep Pine Brook acres under her iron rule. Summer arrived, bringing scorching temperatures and drying out the forest that hugged Pine Brook acres. On the news, meteorologists warned of elevated wildfire risks across the region. My phone buzzed daily with alerts from my agency colleagues about new hot spots. Thankfully, none were near us, yet. Still, the dryness made me uneasy. I stepped up personal efforts around my own property, clearing dead brush, pruning low branches, ensuring a buffer zone that minimized fire spread. A few neighbors saw me and followed suit, grateful for the demonstration. Greg, the jogger, joked that I was turning my yard into a fortress, but he admitted it was wise. Karen took a different view. One afternoon, she confronted me near my side yard. "Jordan, I hope you have HOA approval for all this. We limit the type of plants you can remove, especially older pines. And your brush piles look unsightly from the street." I stared in disbelief. "I'm clearing potential fuel for a wildfire, Karen. This is recommended by state guidelines. The debris is only temporarily piled before disposal." She sniffed, her expression sour. "Curb appeal matters here. We can't have the entire community looking like a construction site. If you want to remove trees, you need a permit from the HOA. I'll be watching to ensure you don't violate any rules." An incredulous laugh nearly escaped me, but I kept my composure. "Understood. But I advise the HOA to adopt a more robust wildfire safety policy. If an actual fire threatens us, no property value matters more than human lives." Karen's lips pursed. She turned on her heel and left without another word. I exhaled, frustration rolling through me. It was stunning to see someone cling so fervently to aesthetics in the face of potential disaster. For a moment, I considered filing an official complaint with the county about her obstructiveness, but I decided to wait, hoping she might relent. Little did I know, her obstinacy was only the tip of the iceberg. One blazing afternoon, a small brush fire erupted on the far side of the county, fortunately miles away from Pine Brook acres. Still, Smoke billowed across the sky, prompting local authorities to consider a precautionary alert. I was at home when my agency contact called me, saying, "Jordan, we might broadcast an advisory for residents to remain on standby. Keep an ear out for local sirens or robocalls in high-risk zones." I thanked them, then waited, monitoring the air quality. The wind direction favored us, so no immediate threat loomed, but complacency kills. I texted neighbors, urging them to pay attention. Harold, ever vigilant, replied, "I'm ready, but I don't think the Pine Brook sirens even work." Indeed, no sirens sounded in Pine Brook Acres that evening. Though the brush fire was contained before it threatened us, the incident illuminated a glaring issue. Afterward, I asked around, why didn't the local sirens go off, even as a test? Some shrugged. Others claimed they had never heard them tested at all. A rumor circulated that the siren equipment behind the community clubhouse was out of order or disconnected to avoid noise complaints. 2 days later, I found a maintenance worker near the clubhouse and quietly asked him about the sirens. He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "Look, I'm not supposed to talk about this, but Ms. Baxter, Karen, told me to disconnect them. She said the constant monthly tests disrupted the peace and turned off prospective homebuyers. She threatened my job if I told anyone." My jaw dropped. Disabling official public safety alerts was not only irresponsible, it could be criminal if done without official permission. This was beyond mere aesthetic fussiness. It put the entire neighborhood at risk. My anger simmered. The worker, pale-faced, apologized. "I needed my job, man. I didn't question her. But it's not right." That evening, I called the county's emergency management office, discreetly asking about the Pine Brook Acres sirens. They confirmed that the county installed them years ago, but local HOAs sometimes handle ongoing maintenance. If the HOA tampered with them without permission, that was illegal. They planned an inspection soon. My heart pounded with a mix of relief and dread. We'd soon see if Karen truly had them sabotaged, and if so, how she might respond when confronted. This was no small matter. Failing to warn people about wildfires can cost lives. Word of the sirens' disconnection soon spread quietly among a few concerned neighbors. Harold confronted Karen at the next HOA meeting, demanding an explanation. She brushed him off, claiming the sirens were under repair, but offered no documentation. Meanwhile, a new wave of hot, dry winds swept through the region, raising wildfire alerts again. Despite these warnings, Karen continued focusing on petty issues. She circulated an email about excessive yard modifications and threatened fines for those aggressively trimming trees. I read the email in disbelief, aware that state fire guidelines encourage thinning certain trees near structures. Others in the neighborhood were equally stunned by her priorities. I tried to keep calm, telling neighbors that the county was investigating the siren situation. Privately, I worried about how far Karen would push back. She clearly had a controlling streak. If she'd gone as far as disabling emergency equipment, what else might she do to maintain her illusions of a perfect, peaceful neighborhood? The next week, I stepped out of my house early, hoping to drive into the city for a meeting. To my surprise, I found a sticker on my car's windshield. HOA warning, illegal overnight street parking. Except my driveway was full because of ongoing renovations. I'd moved my car into the street for one night. This was a minor infraction at best, usually handled with a friendly reminder, but Karen had escalated it to an official warning. Typical. Anger flared. It felt like she was targeting me personally for daring to question her. On a whim, I decided to approach the new HOA manager, James, a younger man who'd replaced a retiring staffer. He seemed sympathetic. "She's singled out a few people before," James admitted in a hushed tone. "But I don't want to lose my job, so I can't openly oppose her. She claims she's looking out for property values. Just be careful. She can be vindictive." Vindictive indeed. As tensions brewed, I had a growing sense that a crisis was on the horizon, one that might expose Karen's disregard for safety in a very public, possibly tragic way. Late July brought a searing heat wave. The local forests turned tinder dry, each pine needle a potential spark. Then, the unthinkable happened. A lightning strike ignited a wildfire about 10 miles away in the rolling foothills. My phone buzzed incessantly with emergency alerts. The blaze was moderate at first, but the wind threatened to push it closer to populated areas, Pine Brook Acres included. At my day job, I was assigned to coordinate potential evacuation routes for multiple communities in the county. The next 48 hours would be critical. If the fire advanced, thousands of residents might need to flee with little notice. Pine Brook Acres sat in a precarious position, basically surrounded by forest on two sides. I rushed home that evening, heart pounding with the weight of responsibility. Usually, I orchestrated such evacuations from a vantage point outside the affected area. Now I was in the crosshairs, determined to keep my own neighborhood safe. The county emergency management team planned to activate sirens and send phone alerts if the fire threatened a mandatory evacuation. But the Pine Brook sirens were compromised, courtesy of Karen's meddling. I called the county liaison, urging them to confirm their function. "We tried to test them this morning," came the grim reply, but they didn't respond. "We have a maintenance crew heading there to see if they're sabotaged." Sabotaged? My blood simmered with anger. If a mandatory evacuation order came and the sirens didn't blare, people could remain unaware until it was too late, especially older residents who might not have reliable cell phones or power. Lives and property were at stake. And ironically, by putting property values ahead of safety, Karen risked causing massive property destruction. I decided to find Karen and confront her directly. Enough was enough. She needed to restore the sirens immediately or let the county do so. That same night, I marched to the HOA office, but it was locked. Peeking through the window, I spotted Karen inside, flipping through papers. I knocked persistently. She opened the door, looking annoyed. "Jordan," she said icily, "what do you want at this hour?" I didn't mince words. "There's a wildfire threatening the region. The county says our sirens are offline. They suspect sabotage. If you had them disconnected, you must reverse it now. People's lives depend on it." Her face hardened. I don't respond well to accusations. The sirens were a nuisance. We had endless complaints about the monthly noise. It was scaring pets, irritating families. I cut in. "So you'd risk them not functioning when we face a real threat? This is bigger than your aesthetic or noise concerns, Karen." She stiffened, refusing to meet my eyes. "Don't lecture me on what's important for Pine Brook Acres. I'm the president here, and that wildfire is still miles away. I won't have us whipped into a panic over a hypothetical." Fury roared through me, but I struggled to remain calm. Disabling official emergency equipment is likely illegal. If the county confirms sabotage, you could face serious charges. "Please, undo whatever you did." She simply smirked. "I'll speak to the board about it. But don't hold your breath. Good night, Jordan." She closed the door in my face. I stood there, thunderstruck. My next move was clear. Notify the county authorities, again, that Karen refused to cooperate. If the fire moved closer, we might have a full-blown crisis on our hands. By dawn, shifting winds drove the wildfire closer. Flames licked the sky just beyond the ridge separating Pine Brook Acres from the foothills. The smell of smoke hung thick in the air. Ash drifted down like dirty snow. I'd rarely felt so torn. Normally, I'd be in a command center orchestrating evacuations, but now my own home and neighbors were in immediate peril. An official evacuation warning went out mid-morning for communities on our side of the ridge. That meant people needed to pack essentials and be ready to leave. The county tried triggering local sirens, but once again, Pine Brook's units stayed silent. Another wave of phone alerts went out, but not everyone reads texts promptly, especially older folks. I took to the streets, knocking on doors, encouraging folks to prep. Harold joined me, along with a few younger neighbors who realized the danger was real. Some residents had already left, piling into cars with kids and pets. Others seemed confused or unconcerned, saying they hadn't heard any sirens. This was exactly the scenario we dreaded. We reached a row of cottages near the forest edge, checking on an elderly couple who rarely used cell phones. Indeed, they had no idea an evacuation warning was in place. They were stunned and frightened. We helped them gather vital documents and medications. As we ushered them to a friend's car, they asked, "Why didn't we hear the sirens?" I clenched my jaw. No easy answer. Karen's arrogance? Her sabotage? Meanwhile, hot embers occasionally drifted overhead, carried by the gusting wind. Pine needles on rooftops smoldered. Fire crews arrived on the main road, preparing to hold back the flames if they jumped the ridge. I glimpsed Karen out her window, scowling as she watched volunteers hustle about. She looked furious, though at what I couldn't guess, maybe seeing her neighborhood in chaos. Maybe the pride she'd clung to was unraveling. By mid-afternoon, the county escalated from a warning to a mandatory evacuation for certain zones. With no working sirens, local cops and firefighters drove street to street, using bullhorns to urge people to leave. More than once, I spotted Karen trailing behind them, snapping photos, possibly to document what she considered an overreaction. The situation was dire, though. Even as the main fire line stayed a few miles away, embers could start spot fires in unprotected areas. Our sky was orange with haze. Yet, the final blow, the real catastrophe, was still unfolding. Little did Karen realize that her repeated refusal to fix or allow the sirens' operation would soon become a national scandal, especially once the county recognized who I was in the professional sense. My dual role as Pine Brook resident and Chief Wildfire Evacuation Specialist for the region would thrust the sabotage into a harsh spotlight, and Karen would not escape unscathed. As the mandatory evacuation spread, I joined a local firefighting supervisor to coordinate safe routes out of Pine Brook. Some roads were already jammed with vehicles. The official county plan was to funnel traffic onto a single main artery leading south, but not all residents realized this. Lack of updated signage made them uncertain which roads led to safety. I tried to fill in the gaps, emailing a quick map to the neighborhood list, marking recommended routes. I also posted a big sign near the clubhouse, referencing the official evacuation plan. Meanwhile, sirens in surrounding communities were blaring in intermittent tests, their wails echoing across the valley. But ours remained silent, a silent condemnation of Karen's sabotage. The wind picked up further, and a spot fire ignited in a brushy ravine just behind Pine Brook. Panic rippled through the remaining residents. Smoke thickened. My phone buzzed with frantic calls from folks seeking direction. Without a functioning loud siren or centralized alert system, communication was disorganized. Nonetheless, the volunteer network and local authorities did their best. We guided cars out, rescuing pets from backyards. My shirt was slick with sweat and reeked of smoke, but I pressed on. Late in the afternoon, the main fire front approached the ridge. Helicopters droned overhead, dropping water and retardant. Fire crews set up lines near the ravine. The entire scene felt surreal, like the disasters I usually managed from a distance, but now personal. And overshadowing it all was the knowledge that if the local sirens had functioned properly, we might have evacuated more smoothly, with less confusion or risk. As the final group of residents fled, I saw Karen on her porch, refusing to budge. She folded her arms, as if daring the flame to intrude on her pristine domain. A policeman shouted for her to leave, but she barked back, "I'm not cowering from a little smoke. This is my home. I decide if I need to go." Her brazen defiance was astounding, given she was the one who had crippled our official warning system. Realizing the danger, I approached. "Karen, you must evacuate," I said, exasperated. "It's a mandatory order. The fire's right behind us." She glared. "You want me gone so you can run your fear campaign? I have rights. I'll leave if I see actual flames. Not before." I stared at her, speechless at the arrogance. Then I turned away, deciding to help others who would accept rescue. This was beyond reason. If the flames advanced, the police would physically remove her. Time was running short. Miraculously, by evening, the worst-case scenario didn't materialize. The coordinated effort of firefighters, air support, and a shift in wind direction prevented the fire from sweeping into Pine Brook Acres. Some properties at the neighborhood's edge sustained minor damage, but no one lost their home entirely. Thanks to county phone alerts, door-to-door calls, and volunteer efforts, we avoided any fatalities. As the flames receded, I felt a wave of relief, though exhaustion weighed on me. Residents trickled back over the next day or two, checking for damage. Karen eventually left, driven out by thick smoke, or perhaps forcibly escorted by the final emergency patrol. When the crisis ended, the story could have ended with a collective sigh of relief, except for the matter of the disabled sirens. County officials investigating the fiasco soon discovered the lines were physically cut behind the community clubhouse. A lock on the main siren control box had been replaced with a private padlock. Evidence pointed to deliberate tampering, not an accident. Suspicion fell heavily on Karen, the HOA president known to despise the siren's noise. That's when my identity came fully into play. I'd kept my professional role modest in the neighborhood, but the local news station covering the wildfire recognized me as the region's Chief Wildfire Evacuation Specialist. Suddenly, the sabotage at Pine Brook Acres turned into a front-page story. HOA president disables evacuation sirens, endangering hundreds. Didn't realize neighbor is top evacuation expert. The story went viral on local social media. People were outraged by the betrayal. They demanded accountability. That morning, as I scrolled headlines over coffee, I felt conflicting emotions: anger at Karen's stupidity and relief that the fire was contained with minimal damage. But deep inside, I sensed that justice needed to be done. Someone who would sabotage a public safety system might do it again if unpunished. Within a week of the wildfire's containment, official inquiries were underway. My agency colleagues openly criticized Pine Brook Acres leadership for ignoring standard fire readiness. The county sheriff's department launched a criminal investigation into the sabotage. Meanwhile, the local DA's office explored possible charges of reckless endangerment, destruction of public safety equipment, and interfering with emergency communications. Karen tried to mount a defense, claiming the sirens were malfunctioning anyway, and that she only requested a reduction in tests. She insisted someone else cut the lines. But the maintenance worker's earlier admission and the replaced lock told a different story. The county found receipts for the new lock purchased under the HOA account, specifically authorized by Karen. With the media spotlight growing, Pine Brook Acres residents turned on her. A special HOA meeting devolved into an angry mob scene, people demanding her immediate resignation. "You risked all our lives to protect property values," they shouted. Some threatened lawsuits. Others described the chaos during evacuation. Through it all, Karen wore a stunned expression, like she couldn't believe her authority had been toppled so swiftly. I avoided her personally. The fiasco overshadowed any petty conflict about yard work or street parking. This was bigger. An entire neighborhood's trust was shattered. My only goal was ensuring such sabotage never happened again. The county installed a new siren control box with a tamper-proof system and publicly mandated monthly tests. No more secret sabotage possible. As days passed, rumors swirled that Karen would face arrest. People whispered about how she'd picked the wrong neighbor to cross, meaning me, since my professional standing added weight to the scandal. But I felt no personal triumph in that. I just wanted the law to hold her accountable for endangering hundreds of lives. The day arrived that many anticipated. A pair of sheriff's vehicles rolled through Pine Brook Acres, stopping at Karen's upscale home, a two-story colonial with a perfect lawn. Word spread fast. A gaggle of neighbors gathered at a distance, watching as deputies walked up her porch. I stood among them, heart pounding with a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Sure, Karen had caused immeasurable anxiety and nearly triggered a disaster, but seeing someone's life unravel still felt grim. She opened the door, her face pale. The deputies read the charges: felony vandalism of public safety equipment, reckless endangerment, and interfering with emergency communications. Cameras flashed from a local news crew. Neighbors murmured. Karen sputtered denials. "This is a travesty. I'm innocent." But the officers calmly cuffed her and led her to a waiting patrol car. No cheers went up, no applause. Just a weighted silence. Some turned away, shaking their heads. As the squad car pulled off, dust trailing behind, I exhaled. The unstoppable momentum of justice was in motion. Karen, the once invincible HOA president, was about to face real consequences for her sabotage. The legal process moved swiftly under the intense public eye. Karen's story garnered headlines. HOA president sabotages wildfire sirens, indicted on felony charges. People were aghast that anyone would endanger an entire neighborhood for vanity. The trial date arrived in early autumn, setting the stage for a tense confrontation. I was subpoenaed as a witness, due to both my professional expertise and my direct knowledge of events in Pine Brook Acres. The prosecution built a straightforward case. Karen disconnected the sirens to preserve the quiet environment she prized, ignoring repeated warnings about wildfire danger. They presented evidence of the cut cables, replaced lock, and statements from the maintenance worker. They underscored the near catastrophe that followed when the wildfire approached, leaving many reliant on chaotic last-minute phone calls instead of official siren blasts. Karen's defense tried deflection. They claimed the sirens were already broken, and she had no direct hand in physically disabling them. However, cross-examination revealed contradictions. The board's treasurer testified that Karen alone authorized the purchase of a new padlock. The maintenance worker confirmed her specific orders to cut power to the system. Emails surfaced in which Karen complained about that infernal siren scaring potential buyers and wrote, "We can't let these tests continue. I want them gone." When I took the stand, I explained the critical importance of timely wildfire alerts. In solemn detail, I recounted how the sabotage hampered evacuation efforts, leaving many residents confused. The jury listened intently. Karen avoided my gaze, looking rattled. The defense tried to paint me as overly dramatic, but my credentials as the region's wildfire evacuation specialist lent weight to my testimony. After several days of arguments, the jury deliberated. The verdict, guilty on multiple counts, including felony vandalism and reckless endangerment. Karen's shoulders slumped as the judge read the decision. Her once unyielding poise crumbled. Public condemnation was swift. At the sentencing hearing, the judge pulled no punches. She blasted Karen for callous disregard of public safety and attempting to subvert official emergency measures. The defendant's tears and pleas for leniency drew little sympathy. The sentence included prison time, a term of 3 years for felony sabotage of emergency equipment. Restitution, she was ordered to pay the county's costs to repair and upgrade the sirens, plus a substantial fine for the reckless endangerment charge. Property confiscation, because Karen could not cover the massive restitution from her personal funds alone, the court authorized a lien on her home in Pine Brook Acres. Potentially, it would be seized and sold to recoup losses. Permanent ban from HOA governance. She was legally barred from holding any position of authority in a homeowners association or similar entity once released. Karen's eyes brimmed with tears, but the judge's voice remained cool, referencing the crisis that endangered hundreds of lives. The gallery, packed with Pine Brook residents, listened in hushed relief. Some had once admired Karen's strict leadership, but now recognized the dangers of her self-righteous approach. As the bailiff led her away, the ex-HOA president was a far cry from the arrogant figure who once scolded neighbors for unsightly yard work. With Karen gone, Pine Brook Acres faced the challenge of rebuilding trust. A newly elected HOA board took immediate steps to reinstate official policies aligned with county guidelines for wildfire prevention. They revised the landscaping rules, allowing for more brush clearance, and welcomed state forestry experts for recommended tree trimming near homes. The local fire chief praised these changes. The siren system, now fully restored, underwent monthly tests that no longer caused panic. Residents appreciated the sense of security. The new HOA president, Linda Moore, emphasized transparency, pledging to never again prioritize aesthetics over life safety measures. Monthly community forums addressed any concerns, fostering an atmosphere of open dialogue rather than stifling them. I stayed in Pine Brook Acres, albeit busier than before. The county recognized the fiasco as a wake-up call, and I was assigned to spearhead a region-wide push for better wildfire readiness in suburban communities. At home, I remained an advisor to the HOA's newly formed Fire Safe Committee, guiding them on best practices like installing ember-resistant vents and ensuring proper evacuation signage. The entire fiasco taught us how a single misguided leader could imperil an entire neighborhood. Yet it also revealed how swiftly a community can rally, correct mistakes, and hold wrongdoers accountable. Whenever the sirens wailed in a monthly test, I felt a pang of relief that we'd never again let petty vanity sabotage our collective safety. Months passed. The memory of Karen's sabotage slowly receded, replaced by the new normal of responsible governance. Some folks moved away, perhaps spooked by the near disaster. Others arrived, attracted by the updated safety measures and the scenic beauty of Pine Brook Acres. Life moved on. The pines swayed gently in the mountain breeze, just as they always had. In quieter moments, I sat on my porch, gazing at the forest that once threatened to burn our homes. My role as a wildfire evacuation specialist continued. Sometimes I traveled for weeks, overseeing preparations in other communities. But returning to Pine Brook felt good. I'd helped shape a safer environment, forging strong bonds with neighbors who once lived under Karen's overshadowing influence. Occasionally, I wondered how Karen was faring in prison. Did she feel remorse? Or did she still cling to the belief that she was protecting property values? All we heard were rumors that she was filing appeals. None succeeded. The law had left little room for leniency, given her blatant endangerment. Meanwhile, the bank eventually foreclosed on her property, which the county used to offset her court-ordered fines. Harold, the neighbor who'd originally called for better wildfire readiness, told me over coffee one day. Pity she let her pride lead her to ruin. But it's better for everyone now. We can't risk letting illusions of a perfect neighborhood override basic safety. I agreed wholeheartedly. A year after the fire threat, the local news station invited me for an interview about wildfire evacuation improvements. The segment highlighted Pine Brook Acres as a success story, once dangerously complacent, but now a model for other HOAs. They briefly revisited the sabotage scandal, referencing Karen's imprisonment. The anchor asked if I had any final thoughts. I spoke carefully. What happened in Pine Brook Acres shows how critical it is to keep emergency systems functioning and trust experts. In wildfire country, every second counts. Disabling warnings to preserve an illusion of tranquility can cost lives and property. But the good news is, communities can learn and change. Pine Brook stands as proof that once you acknowledge the risk, you can adapt and become safer. In the months that followed, surrounding neighborhoods introduced stricter brush clearance guidelines and robust siren testing. At times, I felt a twinge of guilt that it took a near disaster and one person's criminal sabotage to spur these changes, but at least progress came. Karen became a cautionary tale across the region. Her name cropped up whenever HOAs debated whether to curb safety measures in the name of community charm. People recalled Pine Brook's fiasco, concluding no aesthetic concern was worth jeopardizing public safety. Eventually, my role expanded beyond the county. I was seconded to a statewide task force aimed at preventing catastrophic wildfires. The memory of Pine Brook Acres guided me. Whenever I encountered local officials reluctant to adopt full safety measures, I told them the story. How one HOA leader's sabotage nearly locked unsuspecting residents in harm's way. How ignoring hazard warnings for the sake of appearances can end in tragedy, or at best, a narrow escape. Yet, even as my travels increased, I stayed rooted in Pine Brook. The sense of belonging that formed after our shared ordeal was strong. Neighbors recognized me not just as the Chief Wildfire Evacuation Specialist, but as a friend who hammered up signs, cleared brush, and lent a hand whenever storms threatened. The new HOA board valued my input, though they recognized I needed quiet time too. On lazy Sundays, I'd lounge on my porch, smelling the pine-laced air and remembering the chaos of that frantic evacuation. My mind drifted to Karen, once unstoppable, now a footnote in Pine Brook's history. The community had moved on, forging new traditions, annual fire-safe fairs, barbecues to raise funds for improved water storage, neighborhood phone trees to track vulnerable residents. Out of a near catastrophe, we forged resilience. 2 years after Karen's downfall, a new family moved into her former colonial house, refurbished after the foreclosure sale. They seemed unaware of its notorious past. The father, an architect, was enthralled by the tall windows and hillside views. The mother, a teacher, appreciated the tranquil location. Their 2 kids raced around the yard, delighted by the ample space to play. One afternoon, the father flagged me down. He'd heard I was with the HOA's Fire Safe Committee and wanted tips on yard maintenance to reduce fire risk. As I walked him through best practices, like spacing out shrubs and removing dead branches, he asked, "So the old owner ended up in legal trouble, right? Something about messing with the evacuation system." I nodded. Yes. She disabled the wildfire sirens to keep the neighborhood quiet and picturesque, ignoring real safety concerns. She's in prison now. The fiasco was a big turning point for Pine Brook Acres. He shook his head in disbelief. That's wild. Endangering neighbors for vanity? It's a cautionary tale, huh? Absolutely, I replied, smiling wryly. But we learned from it. Our evacuation plan is top-notch now, and the sirens get tested regularly. No illusions about the wildfire threat. This place is safer than ever. He grinned. Sounds good. We love it here so far. Thanks for the guidance. As he walked back, I watched his kids chase each other across the lawn. A sense of contentment washed over me. Pine Brook, once overshadowed by Karen's tyrannical grip, was now thriving. We'd faced a crisis, unmasked sabotage, and emerged stronger, an example of how a community can unite around genuine safety. Time has a way of healing, and Pine Brook Acres found its rhythm. Our story occasionally surfaces in local papers or civic discussions about wildfire readiness. People label it the HOA Karen fiasco, chuckling at the irony of sabotaging sirens in a high-risk zone. Yet those of us who lived it recall the fear, the frantic evacuation, the hair's breadth escape from a potential inferno. I remained the resident wildfire specialist, but I'm no longer the lone voice in the wilderness. The entire HOA fosters a culture of vigilance. We hold annual mock evacuation drills, coordinate with county firefighters, keep the roads clear, the signage updated, the sirens functional. The memory of Karen's sabotage stands as a stark reminder. Never let complacency or vanity override life-saving measures. On quiet evenings, I still think of how it all began. My arrival, Karen's haughty introduction, her obsession with rules that ultimately led her down a criminal path. She tried to preserve an illusion of perfect serenity, but in doing so, she nearly unleashed tragedy. In the end, the illusions shattered, replaced by a community that embraced reality, prepared for danger, and looked out for each other. Thus, Pine Brook Acres stands as both a cautionary tale and a beacon of how a neighborhood can rebound from misguided leadership. Our sirens now echo across the valley each month, a clarion call ensuring no one is caught unprepared. And every time I hear that wail, I'm grateful that the sabotage is undone, that justice was served, and that neighbors stand side by side, ready to face any wildfire that comes our way.